Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real
revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Today is Wednesday, July 26, 2023. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. I'm live here in Dallas for the 97th Annual General Convention of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Breaking news, Alphas announced they are pulling out of Orlando in the 2025 convention due to the racist actions of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. We'll tell you about that and the implications in calling for other black organizations to do the same. Today in Mississippi, a judge has struck down a restrictive new law that penalizes individuals who assist in absentee voting. We'll talk with someone from the ACLU about this critical ruling. Also, yesterday, President Joe Biden signed the National Monument for regarding Emmett Till. We'll talk with a member of the Emmett Till Foundation about that decision and what they will continue to do to keep his legacy and that of Mamie Till-Mobley alive. Also, former Trump advisor and lawyer Rudy Giuliani admits he lied about two black women in Georgia. Of course, his law license is on the line, and this could also cost him millions. Also, folks, we were in Cincinnati last week on Cincinnati Music Festival. We talked to Jodeci. We'll have that in it for you as well. It is time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling.
In Mississippi, a federal judge has struck down a new law that would make it difficult for individuals to assist others in voting. This decision comes after lawyers filed a lawsuit against it. It was filed in June on behalf of the disability rights in Mississippi, saying that this hurts them in a significant way. Joining us right now is Joshua Tom. He is the legal director for the ACLU in Mississippi. Joins me from Jackson. Joshua, glad to have you here. Walk us through this, because we've seen Republicans do this all across the country where they want to make it difficult to assist people. They have, even like in Georgia, they passed a law that says that you couldn't literally even drop off somebody's absentee ballot. They have to do it themselves. These are the kind of actions Republicans are trying to take all across the country.
Yeah, so this law in Mississippi was designed to combat, so-called ballot harvesting. And, that's this idea that people are picking up absentee ballots, sometimes in mass, and doing any number of nefarious things with them, changing them, throwing them away, et cetera, et cetera. The problem with ballot harvesting, and particularly in Mississippi, is that there's zero evidence of that happening. The legislature, when it passed this law, presented no evidence of ballot harvesting. And at court, during the preliminary injunction hearing, the Attorney General of Mississippi's office presented no evidence of ballot harvesting. And, the judge highlighted that in his order, that while there's no evidence of any problems with collection and transmission of absentee ballots, the plaintiffs who we represented did present evidence that the inability to have someone assist them, many disabled voters are unable to, vote without assistance, that without, certain assistance, it'd either be very difficult to vote or they would be disenfranchised.
Now, does this apply only to the disabled, or is this applied to all citizens in Mississippi?
So our lawsuit was on behalf of disabled individuals in Mississippi, whether by reason of disability, blindness, or some other type of condition that would make them unable or make it even more difficult to vote. This injunction that we got from the federal district judge applies to them.
So, are you hopeful that other folks would do the exact same thing? Because again, we are seeing Republicans do this here in Texas, in Georgia, in Florida, in Mississippi, because they want to make it as difficult as possible for folks to vote. They do not want to expand access to the ballot.
Sure. Our lawsuit is based on the Voting Rights Act, a certain provision of the Voting Rights Act that says people with certain disabilities can have, quote, the voters, a person of their choice, help them vote. And what Mississippi did is it limited who could assist people turning in and collecting absentee ballots. And the state law was a clear conflict with the Federal Voting Rights Act. To the extent that other states' laws conflict with the Voting Rights Act in a similar way, to the extent that state laws are limiting people's federal voting rights, I certainly encourage them to bring similar lawsuits.
All right, then. So are you expecting the Republicans in that state to appeal this decision?
We're still waiting to hear. There's been no response from the Attorney General. In my experience, when it comes to the Attorney General of Mississippi defending state laws, they often do appeal. In this particular case, our lawsuit is quite a good one. We have Fifth Circuit precedent supporting our position. And just from a matter of the plain language of the two statutes, we should win. And the judge ruled in our favor, saying we did win based on the plain text. And so, to the extent that the Attorney General does appeal, they have an uphill battle.
All right, Joshua Tom with the ACLU. Great job. Keep fighting the good fight. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Roland.
All right, folks, I want to bring in my panel, Rebecca Carruthers. She is Vice President for Fair Election Center. She's out of D.C. Dr. Niambe Carter, Associate Professor, University of Maryland School of Public Policy, also out of D.C. Rebecca, I want to start with you. Again, we keep seeing this over and over and over again, how Republicans are doing whatever they can to shrink access to the ballot. And this is the thing we keep trying to explain to people. We can't act as if our vote doesn't matter when they're doing all they can to stop folks from voting, even the disabled. Here in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, who is disabled, who is in a wheelchair, he actually vetoed a law making it easy for the disabled to vote in Texas.
Right. We are constantly seeing people are being targeted. We see that there are conservative legislatures across this country that are looking for ways to constrict and restrict those who are eligible to vote. And even in Georgia, we see that those who are eligible to vote, they register to vote, they do all the right things. But then we see that the state of Georgia announced that they're going to purge, I believe it's over 200,000 voters between now and 2024. So especially when we see how tight margins are in a lot of competitive races, we know purging 200,000 people is more than enough to make a difference in the outcome, whether it's for the U.S. Senate, whether it's for a governor's race. And of course, even less than 200,000 voters make a difference when it's a congressional race, much less your state house races as well. But I do want to point out, this Mississippi case was filed because of federal law. That means that when we have good federal legislation, it is protecting and it is serving as a vanguard to make sure that voting rights are still respected in this country. So we really need to push for Congress to do something to further strengthen the Voting Rights Act, to do something to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need something done in Congress before 2024.
Niambe, this is a federal judge making this ruling. And for all those simple Simons out there who keep saying that that judges don't matter, these things are not important, hopefully they now understand this is what happens when you have the right type of federal judges making these decisions.
Absolutely. And I think that's always on the table. Part of the reason why Republicans have been so successful, the conservative movement has been so successful, is they were really strategic about thinking about these presidencies, not just about the person at the top of the ticket, but what does this mean for the appointments that they get to make? Whether we're talking about the Supreme Court, that's where we spend a lot of our attention. But there are also a lot of these lower federal court seats that get filled by these people. And these are, again, lifetime appointments. So these things absolutely do matter. So when we're talking about elections, it's a range of things that come under the purview of the executive that we often sort of dismiss, or we give short shrift because we think of the person holding the title as having the big stick and all the power. But their power can actually last long after they are gone out of office. I mean, we've been talking about this on your show for months, Roland, which is like Donald Trump is gone, but his shadow is very long and very deep because of those Supreme Court picks, because of those federal court judges. So this is absolutely part and parcel of that conversation that has to happen every time we go back to that ballot box, which we're going to have to do again in a few short months, is pick these federal judges, even if by proxy.
And Rebecca, to these folks out here, I hear them talking about, oh, Roland, you keep talking about why vote Democrat. Let's remind people, Biden has named more than 100 judges. He has actually been naming judges who were defense attorneys, civil rights attorneys, individuals who have gone straight from fighting for laws right to the federal bench. And so people need to understand, if Biden and Harris is reelected, that's going to give them an opportunity to appoint another 100 to 150, maybe 200 judges, which mean, and look, it's only about 800 to 900 federal judges in the country.
You know, and these are lifetime appointments. So I would tell people, look, this is not a Democrat thing. This is not a Republican thing. Do your research. And when you're voting for candidates who have the ability to appoint judges, to vote on judges. So on the presidential, so this is those who are running for president. This also includes those running for U.S. Senate. It matters to understand what is their philosophy when it comes to the appointment of judges. These are lifelong judges. And we're seeing, even from the previous administration, a lot of the judges that Trump appointed were judges who were in their 30s, in their 40s. That means that ostensibly they might have another 50 years of making rulings that are going to impact your life. So we need people to lock in and pay attention. Or even on the state level, this coming November, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is on the ballot. And so this is the opportunity for people who are voters in Pennsylvania to determine what type of judges do you want in Pennsylvania that is determining and reviewing state law. So all of these races that impact the judiciary, whether it's on the state level or on the federal level, it matters.
Indeed. All right, folks, going to go to a break. When we come back, more from here in Dallas at the Alpha Convention. The breaking news, the announcement, they're pulling out of the Orlando Convention in 2025 and calling on other black organizations to do the same. Rudy Giuliani also now admits he's a liar. We already knew that. Folks, if you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, be sure to download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. You can also watch us on Amazon News. Go to Amazon Fire. You can watch our 24-hour streaming channel. You can see us there. You can also see us now on Plex TV. And simply go to Live or search for Black Star Network. And don't forget, join our Bring the Funk fan club. Your dollars make it possible for us to travel to places like this, covering the news as it happens. And so please, send your check and money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196, Cash App, $, RM Unfiltered, PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo is RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
as an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol. We've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
For decades, the tobacco industry has deliberately targeted black communities and kids with marketing for menthol cigarettes. It's had a devastating impact on black health. Tobacco use claims 45,000 black lives every year. It's the #1 cause of preventable death. In the 1950s, less than 10% of black smokers used menthol cigarettes. Today, it's 85%. Ban menthol cigarettes. Save lives.
Hello, I'm Jamia Pugh. I am from Coatesville, Pennsylvania, just an hour right outside of Philadelphia.
My name is Jasmine Pugh. I'm also from Coatesville, Pennsylvania.
You are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay right here.
Folks, big news out of the Federal Reserve. Fed Chair Jerome Powell announced they now don't see a recession. Really? For nearly more than a year, all we have heard from economists, from the Federal Reserve, impending recession. Companies begin laying off people, slashing jobs, pulling back on all sorts of things. Now we see not a recession. Man, I wish my man, Dr. Bill Spriggs, was still alive to be with us. He kept telling us, along with other black economists, not to believe this nonsense. We kept seeing jobs reports come out. We kept seeing the economy do well. And all these folks who were doom and gloom, that's what they all predicted because Republicans were all saying that. Niambi, this is a perfect example of why people, we always say economists are sort of like, meteorologists. They can get the stuff wrong and still keep their damn jobs.
Absolutely. And I will say Dr. Spriggs is sorely missed because he was a great colleague and an amazing economist. But listen, I think, I don't know if this will do much to allay people's fears. I mean, the very real thing is that we are paying a lot more for goods than we were paying a few years ago. And I think people still very much feel that. But I think, the evidence is what it is and people's perceptions of what that evidence is what it is. And those things don't often meet. But I do think it at least should bolster public confidence a little bit for people to start making those purchases again. I mean, that's ultimately what this economy has been missing is people buying homes and doing other things. Now, will those interest rates go down probably to the levels they were pre this period? Probably not. But I do think it looks like at least people are stepping out a bit more and willing to commit their dollars in ways they weren't a few months ago, So that seems to confirm this idea that this evidence, right, that the recession that people had forecasted, this sort of doom and gloom, is actually not happening.
But see, here's the thing for me, Rebecca, that drives me crazy. They kept pounding this. And so what happened? People were actually believing it. And so it was in every news story. It was on all the business channels, all the cable news channels, the broadcast channels. So folks started freaking out. And so, again, companies started cutting, laying off people. Beginning of the year, all the tech companies. In fact, in the media business, more jobs have been lost this year than media jobs lost during COVID. And so they were scaring the hell out of people. They're now saying, no big deal, no recession. And to Nyambi's point, here's the deal. We've really been living a lie for the past almost 15 years. Remember, interest rates were cut big time after the housing crisis in 2008. This is 2023. Anybody with any sense should know we were not going to be sitting there at barely, 1% or under 1% interest rate for all of these years. And so at some point, it was going to have to go up.
This is where financial literacy matters. And in this country, financial literacy is not taught at any level. You have to go out of your way to understand how this economy works and how finances work. Even if by the classical definition of a recession of, I think it was like 2 months of retraction in the market by over 20% or whatever. I'm not an economist. I don't know that off the top of my head. However, just because we don't meet the classical definition doesn't mean that inflation isn't happening. We know that during the pandemic, there was excess dollars that were printed that was injected into the economy to actually stimulate the economy and get people to spend more in the economy. So we didn't go into a recession during the pandemic. But we do know that when you print more dollar bills, inflation happens. The other thing that we know is that the credit markets are tightening. The standards in order to get a housing loan, the standards in order to get a business loan has tightened up. So this is the only advice I would tell everybody. If you don't need to get a new car this year, don't get a new car. If you need to purchase another vehicle for you or your family, consider getting something used. Right now is the time to save, to educate yourself about the economy, about personal finances. It's not the time to buy just those big ticket items right now. There is something going on, even if we don't meet the classical definition of recession.
Well, here's the deal at Nyambi. That's what's happening. The reality is, and we've done this on this show before, and that is in the last decade, fewer houses were built in the last decade since the 1930s. So part of the problem with that housing crisis with 2008, from 2010 to 2020, number of houses built were way below what we needed. We're now in a massive housing shortage. You also have private equity who've been buying up a lot of those homes, those so-called toxic assets, and now they're forcing people to pay higher rents. But two, and this is where the Biden administration should be pounding this home every day. They should be blasting all of these companies, because you mentioned rising prices. The rising prices, which is why inflation was high, is because these companies were price gouging. They were all talking about, record earnings. And so they were jacking up the prices unnecessarily. The supply side, in terms of that shortage of goods, has actually leveled off. We're now getting out of that. If prices are still high, it has nothing to do with shortages. It has to do with corporate greed.
Well, and I think we're seeing this across industries. I mean, right now there's a writers and actors strike, right? And that's also about these studios doing the same thing and trying to, line their pockets while, undercutting everyone else. And I think you talked about everyone from gas to airlines. We're actually making money at this moment when they were saying that things were really awful and really terrible. But what we found is that they were actually paying themselves more and passing the cost off to us, while also shortchanging their employees. So I think this whole model that we have of sort of just grab everything you can, right? That's sort of what capitalism incentivizes, is really gross and creates really perverse incentives. And we see it right now with this market. We saw it in the economic downturn in the early aughts. And we see like wisps of it again, but reining in corporate greed, I think, is really going to be central here, because it's not that people don't have money. It's not that people aren't buying things. It's not that people don't want to participate in the market. It's that these companies recognize that they could actually bilk people for more and provide less, including their employees. And that's what we're seeing over and over and over again. Everything from housing, again, to airlines, to cars, right? The value used to be in used cars, but now used cars cost as much as new cars. That something about this isn't tracking, right? And I think this is what you're pointing out, that something is rotten here. And I think we have to start holding these companies accountable for posting record earnings and paying their CEOs these exorbitant sums and then saying, but we lack. We clearly don't.
Absolutely. And on the election side, Rebecca, Again, this should bode very well for Biden and Harris. They talk about Bidenomics. Republicans hate that. But it's a little hard for them to say it's not working. We're seeing manufacturing increase in Georgia, in Arizona. We're seeing, again, stock market still where it is. We're seeing jobs being created. So all of the doom and gloom from Republicans has not transpired. And it's a little hard for them to say, oh, the economy sucks. Every indicator says they're wrong.
Right. If we're going by the definition of whether or not the economy is strong or not, the definitions is showing that, yes, the economy is strong. I think where the Republicans are making their argument is about personal economy, about the kitchen table talk. Is it harder for you, are you to get the same bag of groceries? Does it cost the same or does it cost double now? I think that's where Republicans are talking, while Democrats are talking about the economy in the classical sense, in the large macro sense. But look, next year, people are going to be thinking about their pocketbooks and their wallets. They're going to try to figure out, can I use the same $50 to fill up my gas tank? When 10 years ago, it didn't cost $50 to fill up the average gas tank. How much is it going to cost for me to get a gallon of milk? Get some bread, get some butter, get some eggs. A year ago, eggs for a dozen in certain areas was going up between $6 to $10. Those types of things are not very tenable for a family trying to make it. So I think there's two different conversations going on. One is about the macro economy when we think of the U.S. economy, and the other is about personal economy.
And remember, details don't always help folks. Remember, there were 100,000 chickens that died in a fire in January. That's one reason why the egg prices skyrocketed. Details absolutely matter. All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. We come back. We'll talk about the Alphas pulling out of Florida in 2025, their national convention. We're here at the Alpha Convention in Dallas. They say Ron DeSantis' racist policies are so egregious, black folks should not be spending our money in Florida. We'll discuss that. Plus, we'll talk about an Ohio cop who sicked his canine dog on a black man who had his hands up. That cop does not have a job today. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, broadcasting live from the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated Convention here in Dallas, right here on the Black Star Network. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Dr. Greg Carr, and coming up on the next Black Table, thinking about the Black freedom movement in a global way. Dr. John Monroe joins us to discuss his book, The Anti-Colonial Front, which maps the social justice movement in the United States and its impact internationally, from Asia to Africa, and how movements like anti-communism were used to slow down racial equality, like critical race theory today.
Critical race theory today, communism back then, is essentially mobilized to shut down any challenges to a given system of power.
Connecting the civil rights movement to colonialism on the next Black Table, exclusively here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I am Tommy Davidson. I play Oscar on Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. I don't play Sammy, but I could. Or I don't play Obama, but I could. I don't do Stallone, but I could do all that. And I am here with Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
All right, folks, today's Black and Missing. This is, of course, what we do every single day, trying to keep folks abreast of what often happens in these cases. Serenity Gillum has been missing from her Southside Chicago home since July 24th. The 15-year-old is 5 feet 2 inches tall, weighs 108 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. She also has a piercing on the left side of her nose. Anyone with information about Serenity Gillum is urged to contact the Chicago Police Department Special Victims Unit at 312-747-8380, 312-747-8380. All right, folks, remember we showed you the other day the video of an Ohio police officer who sicked his canine dog on a black man who had his arms up and was not resisting. Well, that cop, folks, has been fired. Circleville Police Department officer Ryan Speakman did not follow protocol when he released the canine on the victim, who had his hands raised during the attack. This is a statement from the police department. The Circleville police officer Ryan Speakman's actions during the review of his canine apprehension of suspect Jadarius Ross on July 4th show that Officer Speakman did not meet the standards and expectations we hold for our police officers. Officer Speakman has been terminated from the department effective immediately. Jadarius was driving a semi-truck allegedly missing a left rear mud flap. Troopers attempted to pull him over, but he failed to stop. During the police chase, he called 911 and told dispatchers the officers were trying to kill him. He did not feel safe pulling over. The chase ended when tire deflating devices were used, and Ross was ordered to exit the vehicle with his hands up. The Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association has filed a grievance on behalf of Speakman, saying he was fired without cause. Like, really? How in the hell is without cause, Niambe? If you have certain protocols, he didn't follow them. This is what happens with these unions. They will protect these cops regardless of whatever they do.
Well, I mean, again, this is yet another case of believe me, not your eyes. I mean, this man was clearly not resisting. There was no danger to the officers. There was nothing that was happening that would have caused them to sick this dog on this man. But we've seen it time and time again where an officer only has to say that I was scared or I had a reasonable suspicion that this person was a danger to me, and then whatever amount of force that they use is perfectly fine. And nothing about this was in any way trying to neutralize the threat. The threat was neutralized at that point, whatever that was. I mean, beyond the fact that this man was black, there was no reason for this dog to be brought into these circumstances. I mean, you see the amount of force that was just around this man. So without the addition of the dog, you know, this man was not a threat. And here we are yet again talking about the same thing. And I think you said it right the first time, Roland, which is we have these police unions, which are very powerful and have no compunction about defending these people, no matter how gross their actions, no matter how dangerous, no matter how sickening. And so this man being fired was the first step to making this right for Mr. Rose.
Well, I tell you, Rebecca, again, first of all, this is fairly fast for a lot of these folks. For this to happen July 4th, video comes out, and now, of course, July 26th, this cop is fired, but he should have been fired. Again, I mean, this man had his hands up. There was no reason to release the dog attacking this man.
We know this was wrong. It should not have happened. It didn't follow standard operating procedures for any law enforcement agency. But there's two things that are very glaringly obvious that we need here. We need a national registry. So when these bad police officers, when these bad sheriffs, when these bad deputies do these bad things and they're fired, there should be a registry so the next law enforcement agency doesn't hire that particular person, because that person has proven they do not have the ability to actually have a gun and a badge. They do not have the ability to be able to pull people over. They do not have the ability to work well with the public. The second thing that's glaringly obvious here is that there has to be some type of police union reform. We are seeing that some police departments are moving in the right direction, albeit slow because it took 20 days. But we're still seeing that there's issues with these police unions who are constantly fighting back, and it seems like they're always on the side of bad actors within law enforcement.
All right, folks, so let's now talk about Rudy Giuliani. The liar now admits he lied. In a court filing, he does not contest what Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss accuse him of that he smeared them after the 2020 election, and he refused to concede his statements caused damage to Moss or Freeman. He still wants to argue his statements about voter fraud in Georgia in the 2020 election were protected speech. Notably, that Freeman and Moss's defamation suit claims they have been subjected to relentless attacks since 2020 when Giuliani and Donald Trump cited them, sometimes by name, to fuel their since-debunked election fraud claims. The poll workers seeking an unspecified amount of damages, claiming Giuliani's actions caused severe emotional distress and put them in danger. At the end of the day, what we're dealing right here are liars. In fact, simple as that, Rebecca. Rudy Giuliani is a liar. He lied repeatedly, and so now he's like, oh, okay, yeah, I admit I wasn't being truthful. But he still wants to argue the results of the election. Dude, give it up. Y'all lied. I hope they take him for millions, and I hope he loses his law license everywhere.
You know, Rudy was a liar, is a liar, and he will be a liar tomorrow. That's been Rudy Giuliani since however long that we've known him. That was him when he was when he was a practicing attorney, and this was also him when he was mayor of New York City. The bottom line here is I hope Shay Moss and her mother get all the money that they can out of him, because people like Rudy Giuliani, they do not understand unless it hits them in the pockets. And I hope for the future, when other people, especially on the conservative side, go on television, they do these relentless attacks that actually cause harm, I hope they all go bankrupt.
You know, Niambi, I mean, these folks have lied so much and so often they've actually believed the lie. And then when you hit them with a lawsuit, now they got to defend the lies. Now it's like, I really wasn't telling the truth, but I still want to argue the results. Sorry, bro, you lost that. Take him for every cent.
Yeah, I agree with you and Rebecca here. I mean, look, we heard that testimony. We saw these women who were really just trying to be good citizens. They were doing their civic duty, and this is the payment they get. I mean, these people are volunteering their time, their energy to serve their communities, and you have these men name checking them in public, and then you have these crazy people who were going after them. They had to leave their home. People were threatening their lives. I mean, these people were singled out. These Black women were singled out in public, online, and every other space for ridicule, for derision. They had their integrity called into question. I mean, they were absolutely terrorized by the former president and Rudy Giuliani, who knew better, right? So he can say all of this, but Rudy Giuliani knew better. He knew it was a lie then. Like to Rebecca's point, he knew it was a lie today. He knows it's going to be a lie tomorrow. And he didn't stop. They were relentless. And they gave these women's names around. And so people started repeating it. That's what made it particularly insidious and dangerous. And we also know how easy it is to gin up hate against Black women, particularly online. And we had to watch these women come before the country and cry and tearfully recount everything that has happened to them because they deigned to do their jobs, their civic duty, which most of us will never experience. Most of us don't have a heart for the kind of work that these women and other people like them do day in and day out. And yet these women were put in harm's way for not being willing to go along with some nonsense because a man didn't get his way, because a white man lost an election to another white man. So I agree. Take every dime that they can get. Rudy Giuliani shouldn't have a license, period, just on the strength of the big lie. So never mind the defamatory remarks about these women. He shouldn't have a law license. He has abdicated all responsibility. He has no integrity. And I hope whatever bar that has issued this man a license acts swiftly, because this man is not just irresponsible. This behavior in this case was dangerous.
Indeed, indeed. All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. We come back. We're going to talk with the general president of Alpha Phi Alpha about their decision to pull the 2025 convention out of Florida. Plus, last week we were in Cincinnati for Cincinnati Music Festival. We caught up with Jodeci, talking with them about what's next for them. We'll have that interview as well. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Be sure to download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Also, of course, you can support us with your dollars. That's critically important for us to cover the stories that we know are important. Send your check and money orders to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available at bookstores nationwide. Download your copy on Audible. We'll be right back.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, financial literacy. Without it, wealth is just a pipe dream. And yet, half of our schools in this country don't even teach it to our kids. You're going to hear from a woman who's determined to change all that, not only here, but around the world.
World of Money is the leading provider of immersive financial education for children ages 7 to 18. We provide 120 online and classroom hours of financial education.
That's right here on Get Wealthy on Black Star Network.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes, actress, writer, and advocate Ray Dawn Chong is here to discuss her childhood and break down her life in Hollywood, a show you don't want to miss.
Well, even at my peak when I was getting a lot of stuff, as soon as I was working a ton, I heard people whispering, oh, we don't want to pay her because we're giving her a break.
Only on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show.
This is your boy, Earthquake.
And you're tuned in to
Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
Folks, Friday in Cincinnati with the Cincinnati Music Festival, and Jodeci took the stage. I have an opportunity to sit down with them in their dressing room to talk about what they're working on, and also chat with them about the 50 years of hip-hop. Here's that conversation courtesy of Procter & Gamble. All right, first off, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip-hop. Just your thoughts on the genre and just what this music has done across the world.
Hip hop is heavily influenced by Jodeci, our style, everything. Like, we big fans of Big Daddy Kane, Rakim, LL Cool J, KRS-One, Dougie Fresh, Run DMC,
even under the Beastie Boys.
Salt and Pepper, the whole Def Jam movement, back in the day. Because we came from Uptown, Andre Harrell, he was part of the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde era with Russell Simmons and all of them. So, and I think we coined the phrase R&B hip hop, hip hop R&B. So, yeah.
It means a lot to us, man. Like Dalvin said, everything Dalvin said, man. Hip-hop is like, in the way it's, the way it's done grow so much, 50 years, man. 50 years alone speaks for itself to me.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to your audience, one of the things that I always say, if you look at those groups in the 60s, you talk about Spinners and OJs, and then you Four Tops and Temptations. So then when you start going to the 90s, you have that next generation of groups that people really, really identify strongly with, and the songs.
It's like I said, we got the love songs, like you said, the OJs and all those. They had they love songs off the hook, man. So we want, we kind of like pattern like that, the group with love songs and all that, and trying to keep our era, our generation. We let them know all the time, hey, if it wasn't for Jodeci or Boyz II Men, other groups like that, it wouldn't be and if it wasn't for Temptations, Four Tops, OJs, and all that, it wouldn't be none of us,
Yeah, when we came along, I think Jodeci, we were so young, we infused gospel and hip hop and R&B. And I think, you know, our image is what set us apart. Because, you know, like they said, like Casey said, the Temptations and all them, they had the harmonies, they had the steps. We came almost like with just the raw, like rappers on stage. It's like when people saw it, it's like, wait a minute, that's the same guy I was talking about, Fat My Lady. They look like thugs on stage. But you know that, and I think after that, every group came out, and Jodeci was the mark that everybody wanted, you know what I'm saying, to set. You know, you got the Jagged Edges, the 112s, and the Drew Hills. Everybody came after us, we kind of set the mark for where they wanted to be. So
I always ask different groups this. I'm going to ask y'all this here, and it's not a question of competition, but was there another group that y'all were like, if we're performing together, they gonna bring it, so we got to bring that heat too? Is there one group that, for some reason, that when y'all saw them, y'all like, yeah, we going to put it on them tonight on the stage? Y'all know, come on, see, y'all trying to, nah, every artist I ask, and there's always a group where they go, yeah, because Eddie Lever said it was the Spinners. He said when the Spinners came out, he said, they gave us a run for our money. He said, we know we had to bring it.
I'm going to tell you this, I think in the 90s, they put Boys and Men against Jodeci, but it was two different groups. You know, I think we toured with MC Hammer, Jodeci, and Boys and Men, so it was a competition thing. It was almost like Prince and the Time and Purple Rain. So it was always like, you know, they was a little nice guys. It was the bad boys. So it's like then they shows start getting a little raunchy, trying to compete with us. But I mean, that's just who we were. You know what I'm saying? So I think that I don't really know. Like,
if I had to,
because I asked,
I would say Silk.
Yeah, you see.
You know what I'm saying? I would say Silk, cause Lil G and John, man, and Lil John, yo, they push it on. I'd be like, I be listening to their records, man. I'd be like, yo, man, they killed that. But yeah, I would say Silk. Absolutely.
Y'all done a lot, but I got to ask you this here: when you look at that crowd today, and when you still see folk who were your age listening to it, but then you got another generation listening to it, how does that make you feel?
I mean, you know, you got rappers like Cardi B's, the NBA YoungBoys, the Drakes, who keeping Jodeci alive, you know, because they mamas turned them on to the music, and now they've come back like, man, we've been missing this. This is something different. Yeah. And, you know, I was listening to Drake today, his new freestyle, he's sampling one of our songs. He's always sampling Jodeci and talking about Jodeci. So I think now when they...
Drake sampled one of y'all songs?
They sampled a lot of songs.
Y'all were like, check.
Yeah, you know, the Plan B by Megan Thee Stallion, it was a beat I did for Jodeci a long time ago. So
you went, check.
Yeah, but, you know, they actually called me. It's like, can we use this beat? I'm like, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, so they're kind of like keeping us alive with this younger generation, because when we tour now, I look out and I see girls young. They singing every word to our song. I'm like, geez, I didn't know Jodeci. But then you think about it, like this young generation keeping us alive amongst all of them. So.
And plus, you know, be real, I just got a phone call from not too long ago from Ty Dolla $ign. Say you want to do some work. So, you know, like I said, the young audience, you know, they really getting into Jodeci now, man.
Well, that was, I was talking, who was I just talking to? I forgot. It was a songwriter. He was, it was Smokey Robinson. And they were asking Smokey, and they said, Smokey, you know, how do you feel about people? And Smokey's like, oh, I have no problem at all. He said, I just go to the mailbox, and I go, I appreciate it.
That's true, though. I mean, that's true. That's true, man. I mean, you know, and we've been blessed to have our music, you know, be sustained over the years, and people using it, sample it, and you know, these checks and mailbox money is good, man.
That sure is. I love when I go to the mailbox.
Yeah, and being able to still tour, man, you know what I'm saying, and have people, you know, love what you do, buy merchandise, and just pay money to come and see you, it's cool.
Now, some cities are always different. What is a Jodeci city where y'all been a lot of places, but it's just...
D.C.
Really?
D.C. broke us. D.C. broke Jodeci.
Yeah,
so basically, D.C. for y'all was like New Orleans for Maze.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it was. I mean, our own hometown was the last to come to the table. Charlotte was the last to come to the table. Yeah. D.C. and then New York and then up north, because everybody thought we was from New York. You know, but, you know, North Carolina was just not, they wasn't getting with it.
Baby, your hometown, the last, y'all like, what y'all doing?
Now they showed all the love. Like, now we just did the culture tour, and it was crazy. We didn't know what to expect, because we haven't played in Charlotte since MC Hammer days.
Tell you what, D.C. for me, baby. D.C., Baltimore, you know what I'm saying? That's our area right there.
Surprisingly now, too, is Chicago. Really have a lot of love for Jodeci for some strange reasons, yeah.
So your eyes lit up when you said D.C.
I love D.C., man. D.C. put us on the map, man.
Put us on the map.
Video Soul, remember that?
Oh, yeah. What's next?
We start our tour July 28th
yeah.
in Charlotte, North Carolina with SWV and Drew Hill. So we're doing like a 24 city tour.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so we're taking it around the West Coast. The Jodeci Block Party, Summer Block Party Tour.
And getting ready for buyout. You know, it's Jodeci's buyout. We're ready to start working on that.
Writers get off a strike, we're going to go back in the
man.
We can't get
on
nothing
strikes.
done.
We can't get nothing done with that right now.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, look, it was great to see y'all out there. Appreciate it. And definitely when the tour starts, one of you guys said, give me your number. He said, pick which city. So I'll be there. You see me down there. You know, I'll be down there in Lennon, you know, doing a little something. You know, I ain't afraid to dance now.
Come on, man. We're going to pull you on stage. We'll put you on stage then. Come on down, get on up and rock.
My feet always work.
Okay. So whatever city you want to come to, you're more than welcome. Come on, yeah.
Right,
open invitation.
I appreciate it. All right. Thanks a bunch. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, so they ain't tell me this here, so this part 2 of the interview. I asked them what's next. They ain't say nothing about a solo project. Okay.
It was all in Jodeci.
Jodeci mode, man. Yeah, but
you got to be always selling.
Yeah, you're right, but I got a project coming out July 23rd called Famous for Mr. Dalvin. It's a solo project. It's an EP. Casey working on it. Joint 2.
Working on my new joint coming out. I haven't made no date yet when it's coming out, but it's coming soon. KC. Yo, it's fire, baby.
Right. We're in Jodeci mode right now, though.
Yeah, we still in Jodeci mode.
Right.
Yeah, but you need to always be selling. So you got a
mailbox, right?
Yes, mailbox. It's called direct deposit. It's called Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, Venmo.
You got that right. You got that right, bro.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate it, man.
All right. All right, folks, tomorrow, all this weekend, next week, we'll have more from the Cincinnati Music Festival, courtesy of Procter & Gamble. And when we come back to Dallas to the Alpha Convention, I'll be chatting with the Alpha President, General President Brother Willis Lonser, about their decision, Florida, 2025 for the National Convention. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes, actress, writer, and advocate Ray Dawn Chong is here to discuss her childhood and break down her life in Hollywood, a show you don't want to miss.
Well, even at my peak when I was getting a lot of stuff, as soon as I was working a ton, I heard people whispering, oh, we don't want to pay her because we're giving her a break.
Only on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
Hello, we're the Critter Fixers. I'm Dr. Bernard Hodges.
And I'm Dr. Terrence Ferguson.
And you're tuned in to
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. I'm live here at the 97th Annual Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated General Convention. in a moment. I mean, literally, folks have been lining up. The public program is going to begin. This is open to the general public, all D9 members. And so I'm going to be emceeing the program. Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes III, my Alpha brother, senior pastor of Friendship West Baptist Church, and the president of the Rainbow Push Coalition will also be speaking. And so on the stage, I'm going to be talking with Brother Willis Lonzo, the general president, talking about the decision to pull out of the convention. In fact, he comes in right now. Anthony, let's swing this around. And so, Mr. President, good to see you here. First and foremost, the announcement went out this morning. Breaking news, Alpha pulling out of Florida in 2025.
That's correct. We cannot stand for Governor DeSantis's antics of attacking not only black people but marginalized communities. These public policies that he's implementing, as well as a stance against voting rights, about appropriate respect for our culture. But the ultimate straw was this absurd perspective that slavery somehow benefited those who were a part of that chattel system. We can't stand for that. We're not going to stand for that. And anywhere we want to spend our monies, it will be in places that are advocating for people of color and marginalized communities.
Now, the Kappas had their convention recently in Tampa. They had a public statement against this as well. But people don't understand, this is not the first time that Alpha has pulled a convention from a location.
That's correct. We did it when Arizona would not acknowledge Martin Luther King's birthday.
In fact, they became the last state to do so.
That's correct. And we took financial hit to do it as an organization because of the principle. Not only is Brother King our brother, but he belongs to the world. What he stood for could not be denigrated by such politics. And we will do what we have to do. We're here in Texas, even today, making a statement. And brothers have to understand, in the new Jim Crow, we have to have new types of tactics, economic tactics, but be willing to sometimes go into the fire and stand close, but to lift the community while we're here. That's why we did the march yesterday to City Hall and really elevated economic issues, gun violence, women's rights, and the right to educate around true history that respects our people.
You mentioned Brother Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and I'm always reminding people, on April 3rd, 1968 at Mason Temple, he called for redistributing the pain, that we do not spend our dollars at places and not reciprocating that. But he also called on black folks to coalesce and operate in unity as well. And so, again, we understand, America understands the money. And so our best way to send the message is to speak with our dollar. Either we are giving it or we're withdrawing it.
I absolutely agree. We have to think that the economic tactics is one of our number one or at least number two tactics. Yes, when we decide to boycott, it does have an impact. But sometimes taking a more decisive move like we did in Florida, that's on a conservative $4.6 million, but probably closer to $10 million of economic surplus that could have helped the Orlando community. That's the governor's decision to cut off his people. He has to remember he's a governor for all people, not just for those who think like him.
Is Alpha also calling on other black organizations to follow our lead?
Absolutely we are. We have been working in concert with the Divine Nine. Trust me, where the Omegas are, the Kappas are in Florida, they will have tactics, I'm sure, as I've talked to their leaderships, respectively, to handle and address their concerns and making sure that the public knows that they've made a commitment to be there and they want to economically be in a positive manner for their organization. No one should take on and make a poor business decision because of political antics. However, to be silent would be the travesty, and they won't be silent, I'm sure. Also in September, and our current chairman of the Council of Presidents, Sister Rashida Liberty, the International Grand Basilisk of Sigma Gamma Rho, has been helping all of us to culminate that. But I also, in the September at the CBC, will become the chairman of the Council of Presidents. And I can assure you, we will continue to push this message as well as our voter education and empowerment so that in 2024, we will be effectively doing an interorganizational alignment. For example, the United Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite Masons, the northern jurisdiction, Sovereign Grand Commander Blaise Moore has already committed to align with the Council of Presidents as we build an interorganizational coalition. We just picked up, as you well know, Brother Dr. Freddie Haynes becoming the president and CEO of Rainbow Push Coalition. Trust me, even if if Reverend Jackson was there, we know they would be with us. Right. So this is what we have to do moving forward and think a broad community approach.
Well, and the thing is, this is not just D9. We're talking about D9. We're talking about, yes, Masons, Links. We're talking about numerous black organizations, NAACP, Urban League, others considering going to Florida places. If all of a sudden 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 black organizations say, Florida, you're off limits, we're now talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 500, $500 million.
Exactly. Your scoring point is absolutely right on. And I'll tell you, that's where we have to hit these folks, is in an economic pocket. I'm also looking to help bring Brother Mark Morial and the Urban League into the integration with Brother Johnson from the NAACP, so we can have a multi-pronged approach as the D9 together, but also just doing an interspread between the black community and its leadership. It's time for us to shake ourselves from the fear of what was and take back that fear and move us forward. Certainly, when we take 2 steps forward, they try to tell us we'll go back 20 steps. But at the end of the day, we need to be in a fighting mode. And as I have said recently in Washington, D.C., until the incorruptible put on incorruption, and those who are immortal put on, the mortal puts on immortality, which means when Christ comes, that's when we'll see the difference. Until then, we need to fight, and we need to be in a posture for fighting.
So I know we got the public program. You got to be there. I got to MC it. So both of us got to get in there. We appreciate it. And, of course, we're live streaming the public program as well, so people will be able to hear more about all of this. We appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Niambi and Rebecca, I just want to get your thoughts on what Brother President just said. Again, using the economic dollar and withdrawing it from Florida. Rebecca, you first.
So I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and also the Links Incorporated. So I definitely hope my leadership also figures out what we could do to stand in solidarity. I'm also concerned about our undergraduate chapters in Florida because we know this governor is attacking college campuses and defunding diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as defunding student activities and student organizations that promote Black folks. So I'm concerned with what's going to happen to the future of our undergraduate chapters in Florida in this current climate.
Niambi, again, I'm always referencing that MLK speech at Mason Temple. And all too often, people keep focusing on the end of the speech when he talks about I've been to the mountaintop. But it's the other 41 minutes where he's talking about black people moving as a collective, where he name-checked companies to boycott. And so people need to understand, this is literally, if Dr. King was alive today, this is exactly what he would be saying black groups should do.
Absolutely. And I think, the financial aspect is something that always gathers attention, but it wouldn't be the first time Black people did that. I mean, we saw Black people boycotting South Carolina, boycotting companies like Denny's. So it wouldn't be the first time that we've seen Black people talking about the importance of our dollar, especially when we think about how little our dollar circulates in our own community. So when you have organizations like Alpha and Alpha Phi Alpha Incorporated, and you have, other D9 organizations, but also that filters out to larger community people who are not members of these organizations who say, you know what, we're going to take their lead. Because I'm sure many of you are connected to people who are not part of your organizations and are telling them the very same things. Do not spend your dollars where you're not respected. So I think one thing we do know is the Black dollar is very important. That is a part of the community that people always want to speak to. That is a part of the community that people always want to reach. And I think when you say to a place like Florida, which is a very popular destination for vacation, for conventions and all kinds of things, we're not going to come there. We're not going to spend our money there, even if it does cost us in the short term. Then that is something that they will wake up to, because as even Rebecca noted, many of her sorors and other young people who are currently in Florida, there are some who might stay, but there are others who are very brilliant and very talented who are going to take their place elsewhere where they feel that it is more hospitable. So we have to think about the sort of other kinds of effects that this can have downstream when you have such retrogressive policies in place.
Indeed. Rebecca, Niambi, I appreciate both of y'all joining us. Thank you so very much. Folks, this is not it for us. I'm about to actually head into the public program, MC the program. We'll be carrying that live right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. And so, y'all, don't turn away. We got a great program for you. We got a packed house as well. And you do not want to miss this Alpha Phi Alpha public program. Again, I'm the MC. Pastor Freddie Haynes is going to be speaking. We got other folks who are going to be speaking as well. So we look forward to a dynamic conversation right here on the Black Star Network. I'll be back in a moment.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is RolandS.Martin.com.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes, actress, writer, and advocate Rae Dawn Chong is here to discuss her childhood and break down her life in Hollywood, a show you don't want to miss.
Well, even at my peak when I was getting a lot of stuff, people whispering, oh, we don't want to pay her because we're giving her a break.
Only on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair, take your seat at the Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, as Alpha's leadership was planning this year's convention and brainstorming about how to host a public program that would allow us as men of Alpha Phi Alpha to honor community service, to engage in a discussion about the social ills impacting us individually and collectively, and to outline an agenda for the future. An idea was birthed with the various political rulings of the Supreme Court that are, in essence, dismantling years of protection. Tonight's discussion is a play on Reverend Dr. King's most important speech that he gave, of course, to SCLC in August at their conference in 1967, is where do we go from here? So this session is called Politics 2023, where do we go from here? Our panelists, let's bring them up. First and foremost, Siobhan Arlene Bradley, President and Founding Principal of Reach Beyond Solutions, LLC, a strategy and innovation consulting firm designed to expand the leadership and strategic capacity of government, corporation, foundation, and nonprofit partners based in Washington, D.C. In January of 2023, she was named as President and CEO of the National Council of Negro Women. She's also the immediate past co-chair of the National Social Action Commission, serving on the National Board of Directors of Delta Sigma Theta, where she serves as the current president and chair of Delta for Women in Action. Next up on our list, folks, if you're from Dallas or anywhere, you know he needs no introduction. He is our second panelist. He is a prophetic pastor, passionate leader, social activist who is engaged in preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. He has devoted his life to economic justice and empowerment in underserved communities and is helping to transform the lives of the disenfranchised. He is the senior pastor of Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas and the new president and CEO of the Rainbow Push Coalition, Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes III. Our third panelist really needs absolutely no introduction. We don't have enough space on my iPad to read his bio. He was a confidant, one of the lieutenants with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., key strategist when it came to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, has dedicated his life to changing the course of history, not only the civil rights movement, but the civil rights movement after that as well. Activist, elected official, groundbreaking ambassador, social entrepreneur, advisor to presidents, and one bad mother. Folks, he is 91 years old, still on the front lines. Put your hands together for Ambassador Andrew Young. I want to first start off with this. April 3rd, 1968, Dr. King is speaking at Mason Temple, and he is talking about, and unfortunately too many of us, Ambassador Young, we only focus on the mountaintop part, but that was a 43-minute and 16-second speech, and we keep ignoring the other 41 minutes. Shame on us. In that speech, Dr. King talked about redistributing the pain. He name-checked companies to boycott. He talked about supporting black businesses. I want to get your thoughts initially on Alpha making the decision not to hold its next convention in Florida as a result of the racist policies of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
I'm sorry you put me on the spot on that one, because I don't like to run from segregation. I don't like to run from evil. We ran to Birmingham because it was a hellhole. And we kind of straightened it out a little bit. And out of the suffering and the struggle in Birmingham, we got the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And I was talking to one of the young people here who's a scholar, and I said, you know, I ran into Derek Bell's wife the other day, and he was our lawyer in Birmingham, and I forgot that when we got to Birmingham, the people there had already written their Birmingham manifesto. It was a whole list of the things that they wanted and the problems they had. And Derek Bell was our lawyer, and he went to Harvard, But before he went to Harvard, we put that manifesto in the papers. The white folks wrote a rebuttal and attacked Martin Luther King for the whole business. And then Martin was in jail, and he wrote the letter from the Birmingham jail and didn't have any paper. And he wrote it around the margins of the New York Times. And when he ran out of paper in the New York Times, he wrote it on toilet paper. And when that letter from the Birmingham jail came out, it went around the world. But I say that and connect it to critical race theory. Derek Bell left there and went to Harvard and started talking about critical race theory, but I really think the ideas came from Birmingham, and they came not from Martin Luther King alone, but from Fred Shuttlesworth and all of the preachers and teachers and people, the ordinary saints of rank and file, that by their marching and their suffering and their facing down the dogs gave us an agenda that, frankly, we're doing pretty good with. Now, you should shut me up, but since you didn't, I'm going to say that we took the message from Birmingham, and Martin carried it all over the country and all over the world. But that was from 1963 to 1968. And in 1968, he was taken from us, they thought. But I don't believe he's gone anywhere. And I thank all of you for commemorating his spirit in the Rock there on the Capitol. And because he used to say, out of a stone of hope. Right. And out of the stone of hope, I don't like the idea of a divine nine, because there was nothing divine about Alpha when I joined it in 1950. But maybe that was just the brothers at Howard. But there's something holy and sacred about that statue, and it is a stone of hope that keeps us alive and keeps us going. So I want to thank all of you for your participation in that, and I want you to know that Martin Luther King is more powerful in more places in the world now than he was in 1968. And they did not quiet him. They unleashed his spirit.
Right.
And the hope that we were singing about and talking about is basically what has carried us through this far. And I tried to carry it on in Atlanta.
Well, you didn't. First of all, you didn't try. You succeeded. You didn't try. You succeeded.
Well, yeah. But we got it. We still. The thing is, the last thing we talked about in New York before he went to Memphis was Harry Belafonte, John Conyers of Michigan, Dick Hatcher of Gary, and myself, and with Dr. King, and everybody said, look, we've got to go beyond marching. We ought not have to get 1,000 people in the street. We ought to be able to pick up and call our senator or our congressman and get them to do it, because we got so far to go and so much to do. Now, that's what we tried to do in Atlanta. And we moved the movement into politics. And we've done pretty good. Just a summary, and then I'll go back on any of the details if you want. I went to visit the Atlanta airport the other day, and I heard that they had broken all the records for every airport in the world. 110 million people had come through there, and 80 million people had gone through Beijing in China. So they're that far ahead of any airport in the world. And so I decided I was going to go see the general manager and thank him. I was shocked, because when I went in there, I didn't see but one white man. And I didn't see but two more black men. It was 7 black women running the busiest airport in the world. And they look like y'all. And they came out of your schools and they joined your sororities. But that airport had a $66 billion impact that year, over 1 million jobs that are controlled by that airport. And to see that, well, yeah, we got a bad crime, we got traffic, but we are making so much progress so fast in so many ways that well, as the song says, I don't feel no ways tired, Reverend.
But Pastor Haynes, that's
far from where we started from.
And Pastor, that's why we talk about the focus of the money. We look at Operation Breadbasket, which I believe is one of the most underappreciated things that Dr. King did, and the idea came from Reverend Leon Sullivan. But part of that was not just, hey, we want products on the shelves, we want you to invest in black businesses, but if you don't, we are going to withdraw our dollars. We spend more than $1 trillion, but we have to get folks also to respect our dollar, which I believe is part of the reason why Alpha says to Florida, peace be out.
Right, and thank you for bringing that up, and I want to salute our president and national leadership for making such a decision. One of the things I'm definitely in agreement with our Ambassador Young, brother Ambassador Young, and that is when we went during the civil rights movement to Birmingham, we went to disrupt it. Now we don't go to Orlando in order to economically disrupt it and make them feel the pain of our not being there. And contrary to the Marjorie Taylor Greens of this world, we come with money. Not only do we come with money, we know how to tip and we handle our business. And so given that our dollars have sense, we decide to go where we are respected. We are basically standing in the tradition of our ancestors during the civil rights movement, who said, if you don't respect our bodies, you will not expect our money. And so we live with that kind of sense as it relates to our dollars. And so Dr. King was right. We need to redistribute the pain, and we need to go back to, as we discussed yesterday, what Breadbasket was doing at the beginning, and that is giving a report card to any business that disrespects us, any business that does not treat our people right. We need to give a report card and then spread that report card to the entire community, so we have decisions to make, because if you disrespect us, don't expect our money. I think we've got to go back to that, because $1 trillion, Roland, imagine if we withdraw that $1 trillion and then invest it in our own community. We can do some serious building.
Siobhan, I'm going back to that speech, and I reference it all the time because really too many people literally have not listened to it, read it. In the exact same speech, Dr. King said black people individually are poor, but collectively we represent one of the richest economies in the world. And he says in there, if we move as a collective, then we can begin to change things. That to me is what we must be talking about if we're talking about Alpha, members of the Divine Nine, but extending that to links, Prince Hall Mason, Eastern Star, all of these black organizations, if we begin to operate collectively, imagine if 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 organizations say no conferences in Florida. We're going to take our money to places where they respect us. Now, all of a sudden, folk realize, because trust me, that's what Disney is doing right now.
It's setting the standard. You know, first of all, thank you all for having us here. And NCNW actually is in alignment with what you're talking about. One of the things that Dr. Bethune talked about in the founding of NCNW was this idea of the collective context, where there was never going to be a table where black women would not sit together. And we're talking about economic impact. Let's talk about the economic impact of black people in this country. The #1 consumer in the world are black people and people of African descent. That's first and foremost. But secondly, you're talking about not investing in Florida. What if 10, 20, 100 organizations got our own convention center? We got our own hotels. We decided to redefine. I want to shout out, I'm a proud Delta, and I'm shouting out my sisters of Alpha Kappa Alpha for the credit union. These are opportunities that make a difference. But here's what I do see.
And Omegas are like, hold up, we had one first.
They did. The Omegas and the Sigmas have one.
Omegas, y'all might want to chill on that. Y'all had one first.
Absolutely.
See?
The Sigmas too.
I know y'all history.
And I think the biggest part that we're missing is this public meeting is actually a part of collective history for black people. We have always aligned together. Where white people have done their due diligence is by separating us across the board. So if we begin to start looking at the ways, if somebody comes for an AKA, they coming for me. If somebody comes for a Delta, they really coming for me. If somebody comes for one of my sisters, they're coming for me. If we look at this on the policy side and we decide, hands down, I'm done with this affirmative action stuff, if we would have voted in 2016, that Supreme Court would have looked different. Right? So you're talking about collective action. If we collectively would have gotten out of our seats, and let's talk about it, brothers that are voting for persons, and I can speak on both sides of C3 and C4 because there's partisanship and then there's factual politics. Factual politics says that we did not make the right decisions, and now we see what the Supreme Court has done. And in doing so, in 2024, if we don't wake up and collectively roll to the polls all day long, we will see not only economic disparities raised, but also health care. For every woman in the room, for every preacher in the room that's worried about abortion, it's the wrong issue. The issue is constitutional freedom. Collectively, if we talk about my rights, you can be on any side of any aisle, you can be on any side of abortion, but if you're not on the side of constitutional freedom, you're not on the side of black people, and don't talk to me.
Ambassador, long game. When I look at Federalist Society, when I look at where conservatives are, they're operating with this long game, 30, 50, 75 years. That was their focus when it came to the Supreme Court. Y'all had to deal with folk who said, man, y'all not going to be successful with this civil rights thing. I don't want to get involved. But you got a lot of folks today, young, middle-aged, and old, who say, I don't see any change. I don't understand. Voting is going to be a waste of my time. And so what would you say to somebody today? How do we reach that person who has no hope, Major, who does not believe anything will change, and they'll say, you wasted my time? How do we reach that person?
First place, I grew up in the Second World War, and we had a song they used to sing. You got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, and don't mess with Mr. In-Between. And it went on to illustrate my last remark, Jonah in the whale, Noah in the ark. What did they do when everything got so dark? They had to accentuate the positive. Now, it's a dark time in some ways, but that's in the news. And the reason I told you about the Atlanta airport, because Atlanta's not dark. I mean, Atlanta is jumping. Atlanta's economy, I'm talking about metropolitan Atlanta now, is $400 billion annually. And so when the baseball team decided that they were going to pull the All-Star game out of Atlanta, they were pulling the All-Star game out of a county that had 3 black women running it and a black sheriff. And I went to him and I told him, you all move too quick because we need this kind of money coming in here because the change is in process. And they said, well, they couldn't get to us till 2025. And I said, fuck you. I said, we just gonna have to win the World Series, which we did.
Hey, you ain't had to bring that up. Y'all beat my Astros. You had to bring that up.
No,
but yeah, I got you.
I'm saying that Florida came very close to electing the sister as senator. And we had so much going on that we didn't give her even the same kind of support that we gave Jimmy Carter 40 years ago in Florida. I went to Florida when Jimmy Carter was running because we were trying to stop Wallace. Yeah. And I went to every little county, and it was the fraternities and sororities that met me at the airport. And we mobilized the whole state of Florida. And that's how Jimmy Carter beat Wallace. And that's how I got to the United Nations. And that's how we brought Africa back into the game. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong to pull out, but I'm saying that we are so heavily involved. I don't want anybody boycotting in Atlanta right now, because I don't go to a restaurant anywhere that's not half filled with black folk. And the only reason I'm there is somebody with money took me. And I couldn't afford to be in those places. It's like going up here to Syria. I couldn't afford that. And we are making so much progress that we've got to organize what we've got. Mm-hmm. And we're ready to go to the next step. And so I have nothing wrong with protests. I've been jailed a couple of times. And I got my ass beat a couple of times. And I mean, it was a real ass whipping. I got kicked and stomped. And it was in Florida, in St. Augustine. And it was worse than everything that Beta Chapter did to me at Howard. Flashback. But the reason I got up and kept going was that I got up and kept going at Beta.
Right.
I've been through that before. You know, you don't let a whole lot of bull stop you and slow you down.
Pastor Haynes, connecting the dots. And I think that really is what so many of us, if we're talking about where do we go from here, 2023, 2024 election, people keep saying we got to vote. Well, first of all, you can't vote unless you're registered. You can't be registered unless you have been enlightened and educated. So for many of us, we have to understand what we must be doing today, preparing people, teaching them, to the ambassador's point, this, for the people who say, buy the Harris ain't done jack. You got to explain what's actually happened. Or this state rep isn't doing anything. No, this is what is happening, because a lot of folks are not following this up every single day, but we just simply can't just say, vote because somebody died. No, there has to be a different connecting of the dots.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, as far as I'm concerned, we can learn a lesson from Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., who in 84 and 88, between those two campaigns, registered to vote some 7 million people. But the thing is, he did not just say somebody died for your right to vote. He registered voters because he had an agenda. And so I think it's very important that we want to marry voter registration with voter education, and voter education simply says there are so many examples about how elections have consequences. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, a Trump-appointed judge denied reparations to the 3 survivors of the Tulsa race massacre. Elections don't matter. Imagine if that was a Clinton-appointed judge. In a real sense, reparations would have taken place. And so it's very important that we have voter registration with an agenda. And perhaps, and I hate to bring them up, but you got to give credit to the Tea Party. In 2008, we partied when Obama won. While we were partying, they went to planning. And as a consequence, they took over local elections, county and state elections. And we are to this day living with the consequences of their planning in 2008. You use the word long game. We got to have a long game. W.E.B. Du Bois told us in the last century we need a 100-year plan, or we continue to react to what others do to us. Instead of always reacting with all the brain power between the Divine Nine alone, and everybody ain't in this room who could be in this room, but between all of us, we have the brain power to come up with a vision 100 years from now that will benefit generations yet unborn. That's how you connect the dots and say we are voting with an agenda, and we vote with an agenda that has everything to do with a long game. Look at, what was it, Roe v. Wade. They lost a number of elections, but they did not stop their agenda, and as a consequence, they got done what they wanted to get done. We've got to have that kind of voting with an agenda, registering voters with an agenda, and then let's think big. Let's think big. We got Divine Nine represented right here. Why don't we make up our minds in 2024? We're going to register 1 million voters each between the 9 of us and register them again with an agenda.
I'll give an example. So 2012.
Wait a minute. Let me just say, they used to call me the Uncle Tom in the movement because I always looked at the other side. Mm-hmm. Not that one side was wrong, but like, oh.
Go ahead, Doc. Go ahead. You know you want to say it, just go ahead and say it. You already cussed.
That we are further along than that. The voters are registered, say, in Georgia. And we would have won. Stacey Abrams would have been the governor if, no, people voted, but black men didn't like the idea of a woman. And they would not. Now, we have to face up to that.
Yeah, but
the other side is that we control the federal politics in Georgia. Georgia is a blue state. Raphael Warnock, who's supposed to be here, is taking care of business in Washington. He's the senator. We got 2 senators, one black and one Jewish. And we're doing okay there, but we're not doing okay in the county.
But Ambassador,
at the county level and at the state level. The state constitutions, it's the governor of Florida, it's the governor of Texas that is crazy.
Right, but in Georgia,
and I don't know. It's a kind of a sickness, and let me go ahead and break it down, and y'all forgive me. But it gets back to sex. And these folk are threatened by black manhood. And I mean, we've taken over the basketball games, the football. You know, we're moving in just about every direction. And that's the way it's supposed to be. But a lot of very rich people are getting very insecure about the very progress that we're making.
Yeah.
So
that's why my book is called White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds.
That's right. But they don't, I go back to all the way back. There's Arnold Toynbee has 17 volumes of history. And in one of them he says that Western civilization was dead when it started coming to America. And the only thing that will save Western civilization is the fact that there is new life and new blood. And he referred indirectly to the slaves coming here. Now, I know you don't want to hear this, but I decided when I was a young man that I was not sent here as slaves. I was sent here with all of us to redeem the soul of America. That's what Martin Luther King said. Well, to redeem the soul of America, you give your life for America. You give your life to help this country rise to its true greatness. The integration of cultures here is creating another kind of spiritual world order. And it's like Joseph in the coat of many colors. Did his brothers sell him into slavery? He didn't think so, and he was easily to forgive them when they came after the famine. And he understood that God sent him into Pharaoh's kitchen to find a way to get to Pharaoh to save Egypt at that time. And so there is a sense in which, well, were we sold into slavery? Yes. Or was that an act that sent us here to redeem the soul of America and also to redeem the planet Earth?
You said something earlier, you talked about Georgia, where Georgia is now. But Georgia didn't get there without mobilizing and organizing.
No.
When you dropped the registration numbers, when we were talking about...
No. We haven't dropped.
No. What I mean is, with the automatic voter registration, there were policies put in place that got the folks registered. Here in Texas in 2022, 75% of all young voters 30 and under did not vote. Right now in Louisiana, the registration numbers in Louisiana for black people are significantly low. Mike Espy, more than 100,000 black folks did not vote in Mississippi, and he only lost by 65,000 votes to Cindy Hyde-Smith. Right. So with Pastor Haynes, what you're talking about there, by registering those folks, we have to use the data, looking at our numbers and where our weaknesses are.
Well, let me keep on to signifying.
And then driving it.
No, let me put one thing in. I fight with my women.
You're welcome.
I don't like these purses. I wish the money that goes into these fancy, highfalutin purses that are designed in Europe were going into education. And I have that fight at my house.
But also, I wish the Air Jordans would also go into education as well.
I have it with my wife, but I don't have it with my daughters.
Absolutely.
But Ambassador, 1 second. I got it. Pastor Haynes, on the mobilization part, we have to be wherever we are, looking at our local numbers to see where the weaknesses are, and then that's where our possibilities lie.
Roland, right here in Texas, you have 700,000 unregistered black voters. Trump won Texas by less than 700,000 votes.
In Texas?
In Texas. And so as a consequence of voter suppression laws that were added to in the 2023 session, Voter suppression, it's more difficult to vote in Texas now than it was in 2021. And so I don't want us, I think it's a both and, Ambassador Young. I think you have some who are registered in some states. I thank God for Georgia, but I can't live here in Texas knowing that they are doing everything in their power to stop us from voting, because you have the Grand Wizard of Texas trying to outdo the Grand Wizard of Florida, and their main thing is they don't want us voting. And so we have to register folk to vote and then mobilize, educate, and get them to the polls. That's still the deal.
Siobhan, I'll give you an example. 2011, Ohio passes a voter suppression bill. They needed 300,000 signatures to get it on the ballot in 2012 to vote on it. So I'm at CBC. Congresswoman Marsha Fudge has her panelitic panel, and I'm questioning all the presidents. And I said, how many of you know about this thing happening in Ohio? And none of them knew. And Congresswoman Fudge, she's looking at me, she's like, okay, move on. I'm like, nope, not moving on. And I stayed on it. Here's what happened. The next day, the panel met. The next day, amongst all Divine Nine, they recognized they had 120 chapters in Ohio alone. If the Divine Nine said every chapter will get 1,000 signatures for the petition, the Divine Nine alone could have been responsible for 1/3 of all that was needed. So the point I'm making is we keep touting our numbers like a pastor touts his church numbers, but it ain't reflected in tithes and offerings.
Well, it depends on the church you go to.
There you go. What I'm saying is we have massive numbers if we use them.
But let's talk about the context. Georgia and Texas, Delta Sigma Theta actually filed suit against both of those states because of the voter suppression laws that were happening. You cannot serve water in line, state of Georgia. You can't access those that are seniors. They can't sit. I mean, these are clear characteristics of white supremacy. And when you're talking about collective action, I want to tell you this, and this is controversial for some, but white supremacy also lands in our organizations as well.
Oh, yeah.
But wait a minute.
Hold on, Ambassador.
Let me give
Finish your
context
point.
to that.
I'm coming. Go ahead.
Because where white supremacy shows up is in these conversations where we're splitting ourselves based on the collective few instead of a collective we. Yeah. And if we decided to be a collective we, where we decide which states we're going to focus on, what our battlegrounds are going to be, if we didn't care about the color of the t-shirt and be United Shades of Black, then we would actually be able to change the trajectory of all these states. Let me just say this about black women. Let me thank black women for saving democracy again. Because, and again, this is not about party, this is about percentages. If you're looking at low propensity voters, that's what we talk about, low propensity and high propensity voters. This conversation we're having is to acquire. What we have to start doing is changing the landscape of who's in this room. Who are we inviting that's not in this room? There's about 3 million degrees in this one room. And what we have not done is dealt with the low propensity voters who don't care about Divine Nine and come off of our high horse and say, you know what, brother, sister, we need to take you to the polls. We need to train you on how to do this. The battleground states, we got to start calling them out. Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona. I mean, these are states where black people are.
Right.
And if we decided to use the VAN system actually calculates not only chapters, but number of low and high propensity voters.
Right.
And if you understood the difference, the high propensity voters are in this room. We're going to go vote because we were taught to vote. But the low propensity voters are the people that got their pants hanging down and you talking about them when they walk by instead of bringing them to the polls with you. So we got to do our due diligence to identify how we organize. This is the last thing I want to say about this. Black men and black women have to stop fighting too. We have got to change this narrative of them, us. Black women are saving the day, but guess what? Brothers, your 17% needs to be in line with wherever we're all going. Well, how do we collectively do this as a people and begin to start focusing all of our investments? We've got to invest in communications. We've got to invest in mobilizing on the ground. You said mobilization. You said education. We also got to talk about candidate updates. I want to clarify a myth for this room. Every Divine Nine organization should be hosting candidate forums. It is not against your tax status.
That's right.
We are all 501c7s mostly in the room. We are able to highlight every candidate that is running in our organizations. You cannot endorse them, but you should be educating your communities about them. And what we have done is we've handcuffed ourselves and said, well, we can't get into that space. And that's the problem.
Right. It would be very risk averse.
Yeah.
Ambassador?
Yeah. In 1972, a couple of things happened. One, I got elected to Congress. I got elected to Congress in a pouring down rain. It rained from 9 o'clock before voting day all day long, and it didn't stop till midnight on voting day. And I said, Lord, why did you drag me out here and leave me? But we had a 73% black turnout of voters. And it was black women in the rain that didn't worry about their hair. They worried about their souls. See? And that's what set Atlanta right.
But right, the 73%.
No.
So with Andrew...
But there was another thing that went with that. There's a guy that had a McDonald's operator, Mac Wilburn.
Yep.
And Maynard Jackson asked him, said, I want to give $1,000 to each county in Georgia that has a black majority population and no black elected officials. And Mac said he was from Arkansas and he didn't feel confident. But he said, can I give it? And that's the first time I ever know a black man that wrote an $18,000 check by himself for those 18 counties that didn't have a black elected official. Now, that's the state. We've been working on the state. We haven't gotten there yet, but we've been working on the state since the 70s.
But I want to focus on the 73%. Andrew Gillum runs in Florida.
Yeah.
Loses by 30,000 votes. Tallahassee Democrat ran a story that showed the top 15 voting counties. 1 through 10 were all red. They voted 65% or higher. You had to get to 50, you had to get to Broward. It was at 57%. Miami-Dade was 54. Louisiana, we ran the numbers in the last election. The black turnout was 38, 35, 32. You won because it was 73. In Chicago, Harold Washington won because it was 85. The problem when we study the numbers, yes, in many cases, some places we are registered, but our percentage is 40, 45, 50. So if we're talking about where do we go from here, Freddie, we've got to, again, study the numbers down to the precinct, and they're all public. You can say in this neighborhood, 38 people voted, but 400 were registered. We should be targeting that neighborhood to get that number to 200 to 300. That's how you change the dynamics and not just keep thinking so large. You got to hit precinct by precinct to get the 73%.
Well, we're in different places, but because we can't give water in the line. But we got 11 days that we can vote. See, we have 11 voting days in Georgia. And so by spreading it out, we don't have the long lines and we don't need people staying but we didn't put the burden on our poor people. See, we put it on the legislature. And the legislature, I mean, and the Supreme Court kind of upheld that.
But we don't have, look, I'm born and raised in Texas. We don't have any luxury with this legislature because they really do not care.
Well, you don't know.
I do know.
No, you don't have the I mean, it was a black woman that got Georgia reapportioned so that I could get in. And she was with the Urban League and Grace Hamilton.
But the problem we have here, you have a supermajority in this state. Georgia has, North Carolina just has a supermajority. Florida has one.
We don't want to just break down on what's wrong.
No.
I'm giving about what's real, because the bottom line is you not only have a supermajority, you have a gerrymandered state.
Exactly.
And they've drawn up these funny lines, and as a consequence, we have fewer voting rights protections in 2023 than you had when you got elected in 1973. We've got to deal with the honest reality that right now our voting rights are under attack.
Ambassador, I'm trying to get to your 73%.
If you're playing baseball,
not 50,
you expect the pitcher to throw at your head, and you got to get out of the way.
Got it.
I mean, it's a game, and life is at stake in this game. And we have to play it at all levels at the same time.
Siobhan, when you're out talking,
it's not either or, it's both and.
Siobhan, when you're out talking, and again, a lot of people don't know how to communicate what's going. How are you communicating to somebody who says, "Ain't nothing changing, none of this is always wasting my time"? What are you saying to that person?
So it depends on what they value, right? The inside-outside game on all of this is about what our voters value. And black people are, looking at the last two Essence polls that came out, particularly black women, black families are interested in key issues: healthcare, criminal justice. So when they talk about George Floyd, people say, you know what, nothing is changing. But what I start talking to them about are specific policies that are aligned for us. I look at that infrastructure bill. Nobody knows what's in the bill. The challenge is, how are we communicating in it?
Right.
The infrastructure bill actually has the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, that actually has rebate dollars on the ground for states to be able to put free internet in homes. Nobody's talking about it. This actual bill also is putting money in states where black businesses are supposed to get a percentage of all these contracts, but there's no one holding them accountable. So when I start talking about what's available, then people begin to pique their interest. We have to start dealing with what is value to voters. What do we value? So, because vote, just say go vote. And I want to talk to there's young people
See, I tell a person, what are the three things you care about?
That's the
We
value.
start there. I don't even go. I say, what are the three things you care about? And we go from there.
Absolutely. And the other thing, too, is the generational piece. You got a generational challenge right now. Young people are not having it. Young people are not moved by just a history conversation.
Nope.
And we've got to be able to say, instead of something's wrong with you, we got to ask ourselves, well, what did we do wrong that they are this way?
Well, in fact,
what are we creating space for young people to be able to engage?
But this is where, and I'm going to go to Pastor Haynes and Ambassador, this is where we also should be talking to our black pollsters. Terrence Woodbury, Cornell Belcher. Terrence Woodbury presented some data to Melanie Campbell's group in Atlanta, where based upon focus groups, and this was one of the interesting things that he said. He said, if you use the phrase voter suppression, he said voters 45 and under automatically think that's civil rights movement. He said, but if you say they're closing our poll locations, he said that identifies with it. Right. He also said in the data, he said, if you look at most politicians, when they come talk to black folks, they talk in terms of poverty dollars. Whereas young voters today want to know about, what about business creation? And so part of this, and this is where every divine night reach out, and I got his number, to Terrence Woodbury and Cornell Belcher, two of the preeminent black pollsters, Ron Lester, another. They've been doing specific focus groups on black folks to say, this is what you should say. And last point, Freddie, he said, if you, in all the data points, the black voters, if you told those black voters, your vote will make the difference between winning and losing, they voted at a higher rate. Amen. So we have to know the language to be speaking to black folks in 2023 that's not the same as 83, 73, 63. Go ahead.
Tell the whole truth. So, and this is a generation that's concerned about the environment. Right now, this planet is on fire, and this generation is growing up wondering, am I going to have a planet to live on? And so to connect voting with the planet and an agenda that reflects that, energizes that vote. I got to go back to this, though, Roland, and that is the whole piece around education. I'm talking about public education. I was teaching at Paul Quinn College a few years ago during an election year, and a young cat bragged to me, I don't vote. And went on to say, I don't vote because of the Electoral College, which is going to elect the president regardless of what I do. We kept talking. The brother never had civics. The brother never had government. And as long as you have a Republican, right-wing, extreme government controlling education, they want us ignorant. They want to rewrite history so that they don't know, so we don't know what role we played in history. And so it's not even unusual that they're talking about what? We benefited from slavery. No, y'all benefited from slavery. They're talking about we gained skills from slavery. No, we came here with skills. And so we've got to take back our education, and in taking back education, we've got to teach folk how government works, because most of our children now don't understand civics or government, and if you don't understand it, you reach ignorant conclusions based on the lack of education.
We're gonna close. I got literally.
Let me just say,
I got 2 minutes, and we're gonna close with this. And I want you to speak to this. Birmingham changed because James Bevel was teaching the children. Anybody who studies the movement, y'all were teaching in the cities that you were going to. Do you believe that we have to get back to freedom schools and the teaching aspect, not just in the classroom, but externally, to teach our folks about going to the next level? Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, but James Bevel and Bernard Lafayette, John Lewis did their job in 1960. Fisk is supposed to be teaching children now. Fisk is supposed, and Tennessee State is supposed to be teaching teachers in the classroom to get to black history. We don't know. Lift every voice and sing.
But Ambassador, here's the problem. There are 107 HBCUs that have 247,000 students. 20% of them are non-black. There are 1.
But that's okay.
No, Ambassador.
No,
Ambassador.
We are not.
There are 1.6 million.
This has never been about black folk. It's been about right versus wrong.
Right, but there are 1.6 million black students at PWIs, and so the reality is there are 6 times more black students at PWIs than HBCUs, so we can't just solely think the HBCUs are going to teach them, because we got the 1.6 million at PWIs.
But we got 52,000 people in Georgia State University right now because we won a lottery.
Yes, and we got here at Texas A&M, my alma mater, they won't even hire a black journalism professor who has the credentials because the governor and the Board of Regents didn't want the sister there because she worked for the New York Times. And so,
and we got a black president at Georgia State, and we graduate more black students there on Hope Scholarship than any school in the world.
And what I'm saying is what y'all done in Georgia has to be replicated in multiple states so we can get to our goal.
But we won't do it complaining about it. We do it by organizing.
Yes.
And the organizations are right here in the Divine Nine. If you're getting the message from God right now, the world is on fire. And if we're going to save it, it's got to be about seriousness. We had 400,000 volunteers working for nothing with the Olympics. And when we brought the Olympics, we raised $2.5 billion for the Olympics, and black folk got 41% of every dollar spent. See? And it's over a long period of time. Now those folks' children are going to colleges, and they're getting the message from their parents. And so I'm not talking about what's wrong anymore. I'm talking about what's right and how we build on it.
So I'm gonna say this here, closes out, because I know Major's cut up another song, and that is this. Our marching orders for me are very simple and pragmatic. And that is, when we leave here, we have to operate from a micro and a macro standpoint. Every person leaving here, you go back to your particular city and say, what was the black turnout in my city? Right. Where are our voters? The data is there at the Board of Elections. Let's go study the data and then begin to say low propensity, high propensity. And then look at school board elections, city council elections, county elections, state rep, state senate, gubernatorial, then congressional. Because what we saw in the 2022 midterms, Moms for Liberty, right-wing hate group, ran school board races all across the South. They took over.
Don't tell us what the enemy's doing.
No, Ambassador.
Let me tell you.
Ambassador, 1 second.
When I lost,
Ambassador, I have to say this here because here's what happened. They took over 14 of the largest school districts in South Carolina and immediately started firing the black superintendents. And what I'm saying is those were school board races that were 100, 200. We can take over those school boards if we get
play. That's one inning.
No, that was South Carolina, North Carolina. That was Georgia, Florida. It was across
when you get thrown for a loss, you don't quit. You go around the other side. Or you line up your blocking different.
And what I'm saying is we about to block, we about to tackle, we about to line up to fight. But I need us to leave here and study the data to see where the numbers are. We got to study the numbers.
We find a way to win it.
Oh, yeah.
This is a public game. If we can win basketball games, football games, track meets, which we can win this political battle. We don't need to bitch. We need to work.
And right. And so what we're going to do is, I got it. So what we're going to do is very simple. Again, we have sessions for our convention later this week. I know every Divine Nine organization has that. I interviewed Brother Lonzo earlier, what they're doing with the Panhandle. We are not going to operate in silos in 2024. We're going to be working with multiple organizations to be able to change the difference. Put your hands together for Siobhan, Pastor Haynes, Ambassador Andrew Young. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.